At number 10, we have Dajjal. The appearance of the Antichrist called Dajjal is a big one. However, Dajjal is not actually mentioned in the Quran, only in the Hadith. Apparently, he will be a Jew that's born in Iran to parents who have not had any children for 30 years. He'll also have only one eye, and he'll claim to be a prophet. He'll deceive a lot of people by performing miracles, and the Hadith mentions that he'll have the word infidel or unbeliever written on his forehead. Now, I actually did a full video on Dajjal, and if you haven't seen it already, I have a link to that down below. Check it out, it's very interesting. At number 9, women outnumbering men 50-1. This is one of the minor signs of the end times in Islam, that women will outnumber men by a 50-1 ratio. Now, no reason is actually given, but Muslims do speculate that this could be due to men that will give their life for their faith or other military duties where women aren't necessarily as much involved as men are. Then this would eventually impact the total amount of men alive versus women alive, so the ratio will tip. The beast comes in at number 8, but this is not too scary because it's a good beast. So before the time of the end, there's going to be this good beast that comes from out of the earth. And now the beast will tell the world to recognize Allah as the supreme God. The beast will wear a ring of King Solomon, another prophet from the Quran, as well as he'll carry the rod of Moses, which is also a prophet. Also, those who reject this message will have the word infidel also written on their foreheads, similar to Dajjal. The great fire is next. So there's going to be a great fire that breaks out from the south of Eden, which today is actually known as Yemen. Now this blaze will spread worldwide, and it's going to be so intense that it's going to drive everybody to the place of final assembly just before the day of resurrection. Now that place will be in Syria, which includes modern day Palestine. All people are subjected to 2 judgments. There's that preliminary judgment at death, and then the final judgment at the time of resurrection. There's also the reign of Jesus. Jesus will proclaim Islam to be the true religion, and all Christians apparently are going to convert when this happens. All other religions are going to be totally eliminated as well, and Jesus will be the sole ruler of the earth. Every single animal that's harmful is going to be completely domesticated, and there's going to be a lot of rain and a plentiful amount of crops and food, and everything's going to be great. There's not going to be any weapons for war or anything like that. Everything's going to be used for the good of humanity. But the thing is, the reign of Jesus is only going to last for 40 years. And during that time, he's going to be regularly going to the city of Mecca. 21 years into his reign, it's said that he's going to marry and have children. And 19 years later, he'll pass away. Now, he'll be buried in Medina next to the Prophet Muhammad, where he will also await the day of resurrection. So when Jesus dies, all the believers will also die peacefully. And unbelievers will be left alone, left behind to just fully indulge their evil passions. Gog and Magog come at number 5. Well, before the reign of Jesus happens, the invasion of Gog and Magog will happen. Now this one is mentioned in the Quran in Surah 18 verses 83 to 99, as well as Surah 21 verse 96. Gog and Magog are represented by 2 nations that are going to have a massive army, and they're going to invade Palestine from the north, and they'll also besiege Jesus as well as his followers. And Jesus at that time is going to pray to Allah to save them, and that's when Allah is going to respond by sending this insect plague that's going to destroy all of those armies. Now, one of the last signs before the end will be an amazing miracle that's going to happen. The sun is actually going to rise in the west. Normally it's in the east. Another minor sign is the smoke. So according to the Quran, there's going to be this cloud of smoke that's going to arise and just cover the entire earth. Now when this happens, it's going to cause a lot of suffering on the planet. Now number 2, the Caliphate, which is the seat of Islamic authority, will be established in the Holy Land. Now a lot of Muslims have a hard time with this because they're not necessarily sure what the term Holy Land actually means. Some say it refers to Palestine, and if it does refer to Palestine, that means that this prophecy hasn't happened yet. And some Muslims believe that this refers to Saudi Arabia, and if it is Saudi Arabia, then this prophecy was fulfilled 1400 years ago. And the final sign of prophecy that I want to mention dealing with the end times in Islam is the 3 trumpets. So after the gathering of the people that I mentioned to Syria from around the world, the first of the 3 trumpets will blow. The first is called the trumpet of terror, and that's going to be like a wake-up call. That's going to put a lot of fear in the hearts of people, like, oh my god, the end is coming. Then there's going to be a second trumpet, and that one is called the trumpet of swoon. This will make every single creature in heaven and earth earth die, except God and except anyone that God chooses to spare, as well as the martyrs who are alive in paradise. They will all be fine. Now, when the universe is totally empty of all life, Allah will declare that He's all powerful and the God of all. 3 times Allah is going to shout, "I am the mighty one," and then again 3 times He's going to say, "To whom does the kingdom belong to?" Then obviously there's going to be no answer back, and He's going to say, "It belongs to the only one God, the conqueror." During the time between these 2 trumpets, that's when Allah is going to create a new heavens and a new earth, and when it's complete, that's when the final trumpet is going to be blown, and that is the trumpet of resurrection. Starting at number 10, we have the return of Jesus. So in the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verses 29 to 31, as well as other places in the New Testament, the words of Jesus are recorded about 2,000 years ago that He will return in the future to judge the living and judge the dead. Now, of course, this is a core Christian belief that is reflected in the Apostles' Creed, which is a summary of the Christian beliefs. Now, it says, "Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. And at the time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory, and He will send His angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather His elect from the 4 winds, from one end of the heavens to the other." We're going to be talking a little bit more about that near the end of this episode, by the way, but the next prophecy at number 9 is the gospel being preached. So in the book of Matthew 24 verses 14, it says, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." By the way, if you don't know, the gospel means the good news. And in this context, it's the good news about Jesus and what He offers in terms of salvation and eternal life. Now, of course, with increasing worldwide availability of TV and the internet, Christians believe that now there's a greater potential for the gospel to be preached to everyone, everywhere on the planet. So pretty much we're living in this prophecy happening right now. There's also a prophecy of false messiahs, and Jesus prophesied in the book of Matthew also that there would be false messiahs that come before His return. So in Matthew 24 verses 23 to 25, we see the following statement. "And at that time, if anyone says to you, 'Look, here is the Christ,' or 'There He is,' do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive even the elect, if that were possible. See, I have told you ahead of time." There's also mention of an unequaled destruction and a time of suffering. So it's prophesied that yes, this is actually going to be a real time. People are going to be suffering a lot. Now, many people have offered their different interpretations and opinions on this prophecy, and some claim that this has already happened, or is currently happening, or is still going to happen in the future. Now, some opinions involve claims of widespread destruction and nuclear war, etc. And now Christians do believe, though, that no matter what happens in this world, no matter how bad things get, God is ultimately still in control. And we find in the book of Matthew, again, in chapter 24, verses 21 and 22, it says, "For then there will be a great distress unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened." Another very interesting prophecy that takes us into the book of Luke of the New Testament is the destruction that will happen in Jerusalem. So in the book of Luke, in chronological order, that is the 3rd gospel, specifically in chapter 21, verses 23 to 24, it says, "How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. There will be great distress in the land and wrath against this people. They will fall by the sword and will be taken as prisoners to all nations. Now Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled." So we see here in the Bible that Jesus prophesied that the Gentiles, which is pretty much another word for non-Jews, would actually trample upon Jerusalem until the end of times. And actually about 40 years after Jesus prophesied that, the Romans actually came in, they destroyed Jerusalem and the temple and forced the Jews into exile. And the temple to this day in Jerusalem still has not been rebuilt. Well, at number 5, there's a prophecy of the love of people growing colder. Now in the book of Matthew 24 and 12, it records this. And because sinfulness shall abound, the love of many shall grow cold. Now, it's not just talking about the followers of the faith, but also people everywhere. No need to elaborate on this one, just look at your local news and you'll see what people are doing in the world. There's also a prophecy coming at number 4 about wars, famines, and earthquakes, and this is what the Bible actually has to say about this. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be great famines, and pestilence, and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. And you can find that in the book of Matthew chapter 24 verses 6 to 8. And as a matter of fact, a lot of prophecies are in the book of Matthew and the whole New Testament in general. But either way, it can be pretty unsettling thinking about the amount of earthquakes, floods, droughts, fires, famines, plagues that have happened quite frequently actually. Now, I did touch on this one earlier, but prophecy number 3 is about false teachers. Now, there are many men who will not listen or obey the truth, whatever that truth is. And this prophecy is specifically talking about false teachers. Those people that promote lies to actually deceive people, which is actually their intention. This is not necessarily referring to people who are simply just ignorant, but either way, for whatever reason, people out there are purposely going to promote lies. Prophecy number 2 in this episode is a 7-headed wild beast. Now, this wild beast with 7 heads is introduced in the book of Revelation, which is actually the last book in the Bible. And it actually represents a world political system. Even though nations may agree on a few things, they unite in their determination to actually maintain their authority rather than submitting to another kingdom or nation. Based on popular interpretation, this nation will also join forces to battle against God's army, but this war will result in the nations being completely destroyed. And you can find this in the book of Revelation chapter 16 verses 14 and 16, as well as chapter 19 verses 19 and 20. And the final prophecy that I want to mention in this episode from the Bible is the rapture. Now, it's safe to say that most Christians believe in the rapture. However, a smaller amount believe in a secret rapture. How the prophecy of the secret rapture is explained is that it's the first stage that occurs when Jesus Christ comes in the air in secret for his saints to remove them from the earth up to heaven. Now, this is called the rapture, and that word rapture comes from the Latin word rapturo, which means to catch away. Now, the belief of the secret rapture is supported by various biblical texts. For example, in the book of Genesis 5 verses 24, we see Enoch, and also in the book of Hebrews 11 and 5, Enoch is mentioned. And also the prophet Elijah in the book of 2 Kings chapter 2 verses 1 and 11. These guys were both raptured up to heaven. Now, most Christians, however, believe that the rapture will not be a secret, and as a matter of fact, they believe that everybody will know when this thing is happening. Those who died holy will come out of their graves, and those who are alive and holy will be caught up in the clouds with Jesus and his angels and taken to heaven, leaving all those people who are unholy dead on the earth for a certain period of time.